Okay. Did everybody have a good weekend? Not really? No. Okay, well, I want to get started. I want to finish out the Romantic period today. We'll get into the 20th century today, and then I want to leave about 20, I don't think it's going to take you more than 20 minutes to take this quiz because, like I said in that email, there are no listening examples and there's no music to identify. So these are just straight up questions. They're either multiple choice, fill in the blank, or somewhat kind of essay style. So let's get through as much as we can today so we have enough time at the end of class today. So we talked about this ballet last time. Can anybody remember what this is from? Who's this?
Swan Lake.
It is Swan Lake. Who's she?
Swan.
What's her name? Do you remember? Odette. Yes, she's Odette. She's the main swan. That's the really coveted role in Swan Lake. So to be the dancer in that role is a pretty big deal. So, graduation. I know everybody's not here yet, but do I have singers in the room? Any singers?
I think.
Olivia is a singer? Okay. I know last term I was asked to see if I knew anybody who might be interested in singing the national anthem for graduation coming up in May this year. I had one student last term who said she was interested. I don't know if that ever actually came of anything, but if you are interested in doing the national anthem, let me know, because I know that they're always looking for somebody to do the national anthem. I think you do have to audition, but it could be kind of a neat thing to do, to be the person singing the national anthem for graduation this year. I don't know, something cool to add to your resume. Also, don't forget there is a student survey coming up for all of you to fill out on. I think you get one for every class, right? Yeah. So yes, please fill that out. I highly recommend filling that out. Helps me out. I love hearing your comments, what you like, what you don't like. It helps me improve the class, so be honest. Okay? All right. Key change assignment. Good job. Most everybody submitted something. Just to let you know, the first things that populate when you Google this assignment are Man in the Mirror, My Heart Will Go On, All I Ask, Love on Top, Wouldn't It Be Nice, Live It on a Prayer. For the most part, most of us went through our own music library, found something that worked well. Some of us needed a little bit of help, so that's okay too. It's not always easy to hear key changes for everybody, especially if you haven't been brought up knowing music. So good job on the key change assignment. Let's talk about those a little bit. So just a couple examples of what you all turned in, what your friends are listening to. This one's Tim's. Got to Be Real by Cheryl Lynn. They would only let me embed the live version, so.
No, that's me.
How many of you know this song? You know her? Hold on, I can hear you. What? Wait, what'd you say?
I have my assignment on a new.
Oh, okay, perfect. One more time. There it is. We just went up a half step. So that was a great example of a key change. I've got another one down here for somebody who's in the room right now. Of course, newer stuff, they won't let me embed.
You girls look fabulous and smart and also great.
And smart, radar.
When I was a young boy, my father took me in.
Has everybody heard this song before?
To see a marching band. He said, son, when you grow up, would you be the singer in the Black Parade?
Still the same key, we just changed tempo. I want to say it was right there. Do that one more time. Right there, did you hear that? It was almost like it went down. Usually we go up in key change, but that's an unusual key change when we go down instead of up. So good job on that one. That was a very good example. We also have one more, and I think, oops. Sometimes you guys are actually paying attention because I actually used this song. What is happening? As a different example earlier in class, and I think somebody heard me say, ooh, did you hear that key change? That was a lovely key change. So from Sister Act, have any of you seen the movie Sister Act? It's a great movie. So this is actually one of the first performances at their school,
Relax.
and the boy was actually really nervous to be the soloist,
Be fine, don't worry.
but he actually does a really good job.
You ready? Come here. Come here, stand over here. Y'all might have to do better than this.
She's like, you guys are gonna have to step it up for that, but actually hear a key change when we're listening to music. Sometimes they're easier to hear than others. So good job on the key change assignment. You all did pretty well. All right, soundtrack project step 1. Everybody got a grade on that. Everybody submitted on time. Everybody followed instructions pretty darn well. So good job on soundtrack project step 1. Step 2 was due today. Did everybody get step 2 in? Or close to? Good. So we also have coming up this week the music attendance paper. Was supposed to be due Thursday. A lot of you did come to the symphony rehearsal. Some of you have already submitted your paper on other things. Is everybody ready to submit a paper on Thursday? Do you need more time to go see something? If I give you till next week to submit that paper, would that be helpful? Yes? Okay. So I'm gonna give you until next week to submit your paper because right now we're in week 9. So our soundtrack project grids are due this week. Next week, Tuesday, we'll continue with lecture, and then I want to do soundtrack project presentations on Thursday. So that will mean that your soundtrack project presentations, that paper, along with your music attendance paper, will both be due on Thursday. Okay, does that work? Gives you a little extra time to do that music attendance paper?
Can we just email it to you?
Of course, yes. That's a good question. I did have a few people ask, how do I submit those? So you can either, for papers, you can either attach a PDF or a Word document to an email to me, or you can submit through ULearn as well, or you can hand me a physically typed paper, whatever you prefer. I'm okay with any of those. Also, don't forget for your soundtrack, for your music attendance paper, if you went to something that I wasn't at or wasn't aware of, make sure you include proof of attendance. So a ticket stub, a program, a video, if you went to like an open mic night or something like that. Yeah, just make sure you include proof because I do Google those things and make sure that those things really did happen. Okay, so good job. We're doing pretty well so far. So any questions on any of the upcoming due dates? Nope? Okay. All right, so step 2, due today, you should have your screen name, password, all of that stuff from last time. This time, provide those replacement songs for each song that's assigned. So each song that's assigned to you, let me know what you're planning on replacing that song with. Provide justification for each song using vocabulary. I know that's a small grid, so you don't have to get too detailed. That's really more what your paper is for. But you can tell me things like, chose this song because it's a slow song in a duple meter and it's a minor key. Things like that. So, and then the last field that you need to fill out for round 2 is enter those stop and start times. So if you want to use a song that maybe necessarily don't want to start right from the beginning, let me know, like, hey, I want to start the song like 30 seconds in or something like that. Do make sure you fill out the entire grid properly. Question?
Does all music have to be on Spotify, or can we switch it to YouTube?
What do you mean?
Because I don't know a lot. I'm trying to use Chopin,
Chopin?
and I don't know if a lot of his music pieces are
On Spotify? Let's find out because I do find a lot of good classical composers on Spotify. So,
because I found one on YouTube where they played his which one was it? Mazurka. I don't know, 68 something,
Yeah.
A minor.
yeah.
Yeah, so.
But it was, you found it on YouTube, but you couldn't find it on Spotify?
YouTube. And then I tried finding it like on a different, because they had like, it was a compilation of a lot of his pieces of music, and so I tried finding it by itself, and I couldn't. I could only find it on that video.
Let's see. So, preludes, nocturnes, waltz, albums. So, a lot of times, yeah, there's a lot of albums in here.
So just look through.
So yeah, I would like maybe click on some of these albums and say, okay, so these are sonatas. There's a Mazurka number 1 in B flat major, was that the one? It was a different Mazurka probably. There's a couple Mazurkas on here, etudes.
Okay, yeah, I'll just look through it.
Check, if you can't find them on Spotify, let me know. I might be willing to make an exception to let you use YouTube instead, so you can get the songs that you really want, because I want you to use the songs that you want. Let me go back. So, Chopin Gold, let's see what's in this one. Preludes, polonaises, valses, etudes, preludes, versus, polonaises, nocturnes, ballades, scherzos, waltz. So there's a good chance if you look through some of these albums, you might find the one you're looking for.
Okay.
If not, let me know, and I would probably be okay with that instead. I do want you to use the songs that you want to have. Yeah, because I want this to be your project. Okay, so good questions. Any other questions about soundtrack project, music attendance assignment, or quiz or final exam? Okay, all right. Good deal. All right. So again, make sure you fill out the entire grid properly. I marked a couple people down just because there are a couple things that were left blank. So just make sure you fill it out. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Okay, I want to continue moving ahead in the 19th century so we can finish the 19th century today and then move into the 20th century. So we're going to finish out the 19th century with Johannes Brahms. And then we're going to do a little bit of review about the Romantic period, about the 19th century, because I know we talked about a lot of composers from the 19th century. So we'll finish up the 19th century with Brahms. How many of you have heard the name Brahms before? Yeah, good. So Brahms, born in 1833, lived to 1897, so not a super long life, but he was pretty prolific for who he was. So we have another German composer. He's a pianist, and he is a very good conductor as well. He only wrote 4 symphonies, but he wrote a lot of other things as well. But it is fairly unique that he only wrote symphonies for as influential and prolific as Brahms was. One of the interesting things about Brahms is that he is an incredibly private individual. I've included this little caricature up here. This is kind of like a silhouette of Brahms, and then what is this little thing right there? Does that look familiar? What kind of animal is that? Did you say a toad? A turtle? Kind of looks like a turtle. It's not a turtle though. Oh, did somebody say that? What'd you say?
Pig.
Think of a tiny little pig
Macro pig?
with quills.
Oh, hedgehog?
A hedgehog, yeah. So what does a hedgehog do when it feels threatened?
Balls up.
Curls up in a ball. So you can't see its face. It's just leave me alone, go away. This is why I can't remember the name of the author of this, or the composer of this caricature, but they really compared Brahms to a hedgehog because he was such a private individual. He wasn't very forthcoming with a lot of things, so I don't think he really had like a lot of friends. He didn't have a lot of people that he considered close acquaintances because he was a very private individual. So this is where this caricature comes from. So when you think of Brahms, and we'll get into some of his music, when I think of Brahms, I think lullaby. That's Brahms. We'll listen to a little bit of that. But Brahms being such a private individual, that's kind of how I remember Brahms. When I think Brahms, I think lullaby, and I think soft, dramatic music. So let's talk a little bit more about him. So part of the reason I think Brahms is such a kind of closed off person is because Robert Schumann, he actually places a lot of expectation on him. He actually dubs him the savior of music, a messiah who's arrived on the scene fully developed, ready to assume the mantle of the deceased Beethoven. Those are some pretty big shoes to fill, right? Beethoven, I mean, was like the culmination of the 19th period, or the 19th century almost. So for Brahms to be dubbed, this predecessor of Beethoven to just kind of like take over where he left off was a huge responsibility. So that publicity for him was kind of double-sided in a way. He became an instant celebrity because Robert Schumann dubbed him as this fantastical composer. However, he wasn't really prepared to offer that much to the public. Again, he's a pretty closed-off individual. So you kind of put me in the spotlight. You didn't really want to be there. A little bit more about Brahms, and why he was dubbed this by Schumann. He is firmly rooted in structures of compositional technique of the classical masters. You're going to hear a lot of things that were really more Baroque and classical in their form and their instrumentation. However, embedded within that are all these just amazingly romantic motives. He is a romantic composer, right? It's the 19th century. Just because he's using a lot of the classical and Baroque ideas, he's still adding in these just incredibly romantic ideas. One of the other things to know about Brahms is we've talked about a lot of German composers. Can you name some of them? Bach, he comes first. Bach, who else did we talk about that was German? Beethoven. And now we have Brahms. And in music history, we talk about the 3 B's of German music: Bach, Beethoven, and Brahms. All very, very, very important German composers who had a lot to do with the development of romantic music in the 19th century. Because of his claim to fame and how prolific he was, he is consequently buried next to Beethoven. Pretty cool, right? I would just die to spend the rest of my days laying next to Beethoven. That would make my death just perfect. So, your book, we're going to talk about and listen to Brahms Symphony No. 4 in E minor, Opus 98. This is the finale. This is the last movement. This is a really good example of Brahms music because there's a lot going on, but on something very simple. So, in this piece, Brahms composes this kaleidoscope of emotions for the listener to hear. There's so much going on. We have everything from happiness to sadness to despair, and I mean, we really just go through just about every emotion you can think of in this movement. One of the neat things about this is there are 30 variations on a short theme present in a series of consistently shifting moods. And we'll hear it right away at the very beginning of this movement. So this theme consists of only 8 notes. So right away in the very beginning, this very first theme, it's a very, very simple theme based on these 8 notes. We start on a, what is this note? E. We go to F what? F sharp. To G. To what's that?
A sharp.
A sharp. To
B.
Yep. To
D.
I think those are actually an octave apart. That's a B. So B, B, E. So 5, 5, 1. So it's a really, really simple melody. And in the beginning, we hear all of these notes equally. They're all dotted half notes. And so it's really, really easy to hear. The winds and the brass play this right away. And then right away, he starts doing variations on it. And so you hear these notes, but they get varied every time. And there's 30 variations of this theme right here. So it does make its first appearance in The Wind and the Brass. It's a really grandiose entrance in the very beginning. And then in variation 1, it's very subdued, reticent, played by the timpani and a little brass. Variation 2 is a little more wistful with woodwinds included. Then in variation 3, it's a little more rhythmically lively with violins taking over the lyrical counter melody. We have these shifting moods continue as each variation creates its own sound world. And remember, we said we had 30 variations, so it happens fairly quickly. So we'll listen to this. We do have this theme, our original theme, and then variations. So it's a theme and variations. We have that ABA theme. What's the other word that we call the ABA form? You remember? We have one section, another section, and then the first section repeats itself again. It's 3, right? So what do we call that? It's ternary, right? And so that ternary, that form was super popular in what time period? Do you remember? Nope, a little bit later. Came before the classical period. Baroque, yes. So the neat thing about Brahms is he was really using those rules and structures from Baroque and classical periods and combining them with these really romantic ideas. And really this is why we're ending the 19th century with Brahms, because this final movement really sums up an entire century of symphonic composition. Its orchestration is rich, the textures are varied, and we have really advanced harmonies at this point. So, let's listen to this. You can follow along with this on page 344 and see how it goes from variation to variation to variation. So right in the beginning, we start with those long note tones, and then like 15 seconds in variation 1, 30 seconds in variation 2, 46 seconds is variation 3. So they happen pretty quickly, but listen to those first 8 notes, and in every variation, do you hear those 8 notes in some sort of variation? Let's listen. Let's see how loud this is. Where was our thing? So this is variation 2. We're already in variation 2. And do you hear how the texture changes when we go from woodwinds to brass to strings? Romantic motives, the strings, just, get you right in the heart. Already in variation 9. So we've taken that really simple motive or idea and really varied it. That's why it's really more Baroque than it is Romantic. Because remember, in the Romantic period, we have things like leitmotifs or idee fixes, which are much more complicated ideas. This was a very simple idea. That's what makes it very Baroque. I just want to make it to like 4 minutes at least. So we do a key change at 4 minutes and see if we can hear it. variation 12. We're already up to 12. And we're about to do a key change. We just went from E minor to E major. Sounds a little bit more happy now, doesn't it? Not quite as ominous and damning as it was before. So this is variation 13. This goes on, of course. We have several variations, but people absolutely adore Brahms. He wrote really, really interesting music using both Baroque and classical themes intermixed with these romantic ideas. So that's why he is considered one of those great three German composers, Bach, Beethoven, and Brahms. Now remember I said when I think of Brahms,